Hello, listeners, and welcome to Plugged In, the energy news podcast from Montel, where we bring you the latest news, issues, and changes happening in the energy sector. This episode is brought to you from our Nordic Energy Day in Oslo, where the challenges facing the region's markets are top of the agenda. I'll be speaking to experts from Norway and Sweden, but first I'm joined by our Nordic editor, Olav Vilnes. I'd like to start off by asking you about the main challenges faced by the Nordic power market at the moment.
Yeah, one of the major challenges now is to get new investments into fossil-free electricity production, which can help the countries reach these ambitious decarbonization targets towards the 2035 and 2040s. And I think power production is already mostly fossil-free in the Nordic region, but there's still a lot to do when it comes to switching from fossils to renewables in industries, in transport, farming, so on. And of course, then for that you need more electricity production, green electricity production. And currently there's some kind of a waiting game there where power producers want to invest in new generation capacity because prices are too low, while the big industrials who want to switch to electricity, they want certainty that the electricity is there, that it is affordable for a long time.
And why are politicians in several countries in the region becoming increasingly focused on the power or the electricity market?
I think you saw a big change after the energy price crisis in 2022 when prices rose quite heavily. You've seen huge spread in prices in Scandinavia between the northern parts, which have seen very low prices. This year, like in northern Norway, €5. It's much higher in the south because prices there are linked to the continental price levels, which have been inflated by higher gas prices. And then you get the public discontent, and you get political intervention trying to curb this discontent because the politicians need to win the next election.
Absolutely. That's always the case. I think that's a familiar area. But how likely do you think are further interventions into the Nordic wholesale or retail market?
I don't think you will see big intervention that really disturbs the pricing to a large extent. I mean, you have seen already in Norway, you have this fixed price for households, around €40 per megawatt for a year. That's, of course, an intervention, but it doesn't really affect the wholesale market functionality. It's just like it removes flexibility from the system. You've also seen some issues in Norway, some debates that majority of MPs now do not want to renew the power links to Denmark, to older power links, because they feel that the public doesn't really want this exchange, and therefore that it could give lower prices in Norway. But that's maybe a short term. Maybe good for the short term, but maybe not for the long term.
And certainly not for pan-Nordic relations. Olav, thank you very much for setting the scene for us on the podcast. The Nordic power market has been the torchbearer for liberalised electricity markets for decades. But in 2025, it appears to be struggling. Prices are volatile, profitability is declining, and there's a looming threat from politicians who want to intervene into the market. So what do industry leaders in the region think about the challenges currently faced by the power market in the Nordics? I'm pleased to be joined by Fredrik Bodecker, CEO of Bodecker Partners. Welcome back to the podcast, Fredrik. It's great to have you back on again.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And also a warm welcome to Kolbjørn, Hembre, CEO at Entelios.
Thank you.
Fredrik, I'd like to start by asking you about your position on the current market design, if you like. Is it fit for purpose?
Yes, I would say that. There's a lot of criticism that things aren't working, but being around for quite a few years and having many different periods to compare with, I would say, yeah, it is working, and it's getting better, I would say. But there is definitely, as you said, a threat of, I would say, politicians coming in and changing things that will lead to more changes, and then it won't work so good anymore. But for the moment, I think it's okay. Of course, I would love 3 times more liquidity and lower imbalance prices, but being originally a greedy capitalist trader, I would say let price signals show the way for us, and we will get things working.
But why do the politicians want to meddle now?
I would say that it's the old answer they always had, that they need a lot of votes, and let's react fast on things that that will give a lot of votes. So high prices, high volatility, large imbalance prices. Yes, I know it hurts. It hurts a lot of players, but we've already seen the signs that there are new players coming in, old players adapting, and these things will eventually fix themselves if we are let to do that.
If you step back and let the market do its work, is that what you're saying, Fredrik?
Yeah.
What's your view here, Kolbjørn?
No, it's more or less the same. I think it's the price who will balance out the market. So I have used to say that it's two ways of doing this. It's the Chinese model where someone decides who will get power when it's a lack of power. And then you have the European or the Western model where the price will make someone to turn out if it's lack of energy. So that's how a free market works. If you then start to give subsidies to part of the market, like we see in Norway now, I'm doubting that will solve the problem. I think it will just increase the problem.
Mm. And of course, there's an election looming in Norway. And some of these areas are quite political: cables, wind power, retail electricity prices. Do you think there's going to be a greater threat of political intervention, post-election?
No, but I think if you take Norges Pris, which I think the good thing about Norges Pris is that you get the public discussions down, and when you have a lot of, I will say, people discussing a market they don't know anything about, you get a very ungrown up discussion in a way, if you understand what I mean. So I think that could maybe silence the big discussions and let then the professionals solve it in the end. But to add on that, which I'm a little bit afraid of, we are a part of the power market, and that group of people is not that big, to be honest. We are now in a position where we are doing this more and more complicated. We have a dozen of price areas. We have an imbalance market where even I, been in the business for 30 years, struggle to understand and to read the market. Then, of course, for an industry in Sweden or a real estate company in the Nordics, they struggle to, in a way, predict the prices. And if they don't understand and if they think things are unfair, then you actually run into trouble. And that's what we are doing as a branch.
As a sector, absolutely. So in terms of if you, the experts, find the market currently as it stands too complicated, then we're heading maybe in the wrong direction. But Fredrik, what's the situation in Sweden? Has there also been calls for intervention into, to provide stable prices for retail customers, etc.?
Yeah, we had a lot of discussions around that. There were proposals, I think, before the previous election to do, I would say, a similar thing to Norges Pris, to have, I would say, a Swedish price there and not be contaminated by the German price level. And living in the south of Sweden, of course, as a private person, I can understand the reason. We pay quite a lot more than the people in the north. But I think that's a very good point, that when these suggestions come up that have been tested many times before, politicians deciding price levels, it's not very new, and I'm still waiting for a time when it has worked. But when these things come up and we start discussing them, I think that's good, because if we can have a reasonable discussion, we will be able to point out, no, this won't work. We need to do it differently. But at the same time, I'm always coming back to that. If there are 1 million voters that wants one thing, it can be as stupid as you wish.
Of course. that's the situation in which we operate, of course, and live in. But Fredrik, you mentioned market liquidity. We're seeing that obviously dwindling. We're seeing very volatile prices. Kolbjørn mentioned, certainly you both mentioned the imbalance prices, which are very high, and the growth in renewables is slowing. So the Nordic power market is facing several challenges, and even some politicians have called the market dysfunctional. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but there are, say, these child diseases that pops up. We have introduced several new things into the market: the flow-based coupling, new ways to trade MFRR, and all these things. And there are. And we are still in those periods where we are adapting to that. I would say, even though a lot of the experts said, don't do this and don't do it this way, but the authorities did it anyway. And now we see, okay, look, we said it wouldn't work. It is not working, but we are kind of fixing it slowly but surely. There are, like always, smart, or let's say, not so smart, but traders in the gray zone utilizing this, and I think that's the way to do it. You got to expose your ideas to people that wants to utilize the loopholes, and then cover them one by one. But generally not patching these loopholes with new rules. So yes. Challenges, but I think it's good. Let us face those challenges and let us solve those problems, and solve them without complicating the system too much. That's.
I mean, what do you think, Kolbjørn? What are the greatest challenges facing the sector at the moment in Norway and in the wider Nordic region?
I think we are not prepared for, in a way, the green shift where you get a lot of wind and solar into the system, which is very unstable, and the actors in the power market historically has been very steady. It's been based on magazines and on nuclear power, which is a very stable ground. So I think we are not. We need to learn this, as Fredrik said. We have to take it step by step, because it's a new situation where no one actually know what to do exactly. The other part, which I think is also a problematic thing in the Nordics, is that we have a consumer side. The consumption side is not flexible. I mean, they use energy when they need it, and there is very, very few points where you have big flexibility on taking consumption down. So when you have not stable production, but you have a stable consumption side, then you run into trouble. And I think we haven't been good enough prepared, and also the authorities is not prepared for it. So I think they are testing with flow based and with new balance pricing systems, which I think is in the right direction, but we are not able to foresee the effect for it. So for wind producers, for actors like us, which is a trader, it's very hard to, in a way, take on board very new and predictable cost into our plans. So the risk is increasing dramatically.
Fredrik, you want to come in here?
Yeah, I just thought of one thing that kind of shows this journey, at least in the Swedish system, is a couple of years ago the wind power owners and industry was blamed of causing a lot of imbalances, and I think that was a valid criticism, because the system hadn't adapted to that. So there was not a system view. Once again, politicians had decided we need a lot of wind, but they forgot about it's a system, and a lot of criticism. And then slowly the system was changed, imbalance costs shifted, so those who cause imbalances now pay for them. And I would say that is a system that is more or less in place, or it will be in place in a very different way than it was some years ago. So, and on the other hand, many of my clients are wind farm owners, so they didn't have that in their 15-year budgets. So I think that's a little unfortunate because they were promised to say another future. But you have to adapt.
I want to come back to that later, Fredrik. But in the meantime, Kolbjørn, is there anything that the companies or the sector more generally can be doing to sort of inform the public or to provide a greater information or explanation about how the system works? I'm thinking in terms of, interconnectors aren't all bad, for example, or why some pay more for their power than others, and there is a reason for that. Is the sector doing enough, do you think?
No, I think we are not at all good enough to explain how this is working. For me, it's like a road system. I mean, you have queue problems into Oslo or to Stockholm or to Copenhagen, and then you solve it by introducing queue fees and these kind of things. It's the same thing here. We have to adapt, in a way, a new traffic situation, but we are not able to simplify it in our explanation in the public. So we as a branch have to, in a way, engage more sophisticated marketeers, which can help us to explain this on a much more easy way, because it's not that complicated, to be honest.
Engage the PR people and the people that can go out and explain it in less complicated way, should we say? I mean, I don't want to dumb it down, but I think it needs to be explained absolutely. And Fredrik, you mentioned some wind producers. Now, I think the low prices in northern Sweden, northern Norway as well, are having quite a disastrous effects on the profitability of wind developers and producers. But what can be done to alleviate that situation? I would think it's a perfect incentive to build more batteries, surely, and maybe some form of industrial, such as data centers, etc. I mean, is that happening?
Yes, I would say you shouldn't say batteries to me, because then I won't stop speaking as well talking. It's definitely my favorite area. Yes, we are seeing that many players now are in different stages of looking how batteries can help them, from getting into standalone batteries to putting it behind the meter at their let's say present places, and I think also they have kind of realized that waiting for all these power to X projects, that huge demand that was supposed to come, even the data centers now that everyone and their grandmother needs to build a data center and needs 1,000 megawatts. That's not going to happen tomorrow. But putting a battery in place, you can do that in 9 to 15 months if you're fast and get through the paperwork. So those things will come. Those things will, and also I would say, and I've been on the barricades for this for many years, that the wind producers must take more control of how they are producing. There are things that they aren't allowed to do. They aren't allowed to purposely curtail to, let's say, increase prices, like hydro producers are allowed to do for some reason. But they are forced to curtail, not to become imbalance. And this is something we see now. More and more of them are getting very active in curtailing, so they don't cause imbalances, and that then opens up for the curtail volume to be traded on the short-term markets. That is a super interesting area where they take control, and and
it's kind of a win-win in a sense.
Yeah, the downside is that there's a lot of energy that is curtailed that could have been used for other things. If the TSOs hadn't slept on the job and built the wires north-south, then we would have been able to outcompete German coal, for example.
Yeah. What's your view here, Kolbjørn? Can we blame or point the finger at the system operators or the other factors at play here?
Yeah, I think for sure they have also slept in many years, and I also think we are too slow in adapting batteries into the market. I think it's more favorable with batteries linked to solar and wind than just put them up as a effect reserve in the grid. So because then we can benefit much more from the batteries actually, because one part of the battery market, which I maybe not agreed too much with Fredrik, I don't know, but that's if you invest, if a company invests 4 billion Swedish kronor in a battery park, all that money has to be paid by the consumers in the end. And the branch in itself are not willing to take that investment. So we see companies investing in batteries with no link actually to the market or to the branch. And they just actually add an extra cost into the market without optimizing the grid system and the market. So here we should maybe have a broader discussion.
A bit more a systemic approach.
Yeah,
you're saying.
exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely. But there's also been a big slowdown in the renewables build in certainly in some areas in the Nordic region and Norway in particular. What are the reasons for this? I'm thinking, in terms of wind in particular, and also hydro. And new hydro is problematic in Norway, isn't it? I mean, what are the reasons behind it? Is it all NIMBYism and people protesting against wind turbines, or is there more to it than that?
It's first of all the opinion that doesn't want onshore wind. That have to change. I think that's and we maybe see signals now that it's coming more and more. One other problem is, of course, that when you combine wind with a very flexible water production, then they will outcompete the wind in a way. So it's hard to operate, and the capture, we see the capture rate, the real price they get from wind production is much lower than the average price in the market. So this one, I think, has been a surprise for the early movers in the wind market. But we see now, we are in business also together with Fredrik, that we have to educate the wind builders that they have to operate the park into the market, not just produce when it's blow and expect that you get money for the production, because that was the starting point.
Yeah,
that's what Fredrik, you're saying they need to take control. And
yeah. And that's a funny anecdote there. I think it was 9 years ago. I was at a Montel conference where an analyst from Swiss Power, which is now part of Montel, he was the first one that said, okay, we need to look at this cannibalization. It could happen if we don't stop building, and this was 9 years ago, and he was very correct.
The cannibalization, as in when there's a massive oversupply and they basically prices tumble. Yeah.
That's true. But I also think we have to look at the big picture here. That we need more energy long term. We have a huge surplus in the north of Norway, Finland, Sweden, but I think every civilization needs more energy. That's I would say very contrary to a speaker from a large energy company I listened to at a recent conference, who said that we must change our behavior and use less energy. And I would say, I think that's the wrong track.
And certainly the world in which we're going into with the increasing use of AI and the more sophisticated technology around phones and et cetera, requires more energy, and that should ideally be renewable. But Sweden, but Fredrik, Sweden seems to be opted for nuclear rather than wind, and certainly offshore wind. There's a clear decision to not go for that, but go for nuclear. What's the reasoning here?
I think this is an interesting question, because up until yesterday, that would still have been uncertain, because we have a new election next year in September. But yesterday, the Sweden Social Democrats came out and said that now they are pro-financing Swedish nuclear. So I would say the probability of nuclear being built, I won't say how much, but at least one nuclear power plant being built, is very high in my mind. It tends to fall in these political camps. Left, then wind, offshore wind; right, nuclear. I wish it wasn't that way. I wish we had a neutral stance. Also leaning back to what you said about the public discussion, can't we try to find some neutral judge coming here and say, okay, now we need to discuss this once and for all?
But you're saying in Sweden there is a broad political consensus that the Social Democrats have come on board as well.
It's very broad now. It's only the Greens and the left, and yes, the Social Democrats would need them in probably to form a government, but I don't think their position is so strong anymore.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I think that it's very true. But in countries such as Great Britain and France, there's a broader consensus on the left as well. And I think it's Sweden and certainly Finland that there is a greater public acceptance of nuclear, whereas and France as well, of course, but where compared to other countries. We have in recent years seen very bullish forecasts for demand growth in the Nordic region. Certainly some of the TSOs in recent years have been very, very optimistic in what they see as growth in demand for electricity. What's your view here, Kolbjørn? Do you share those kind of forecasts for bullish demand growth?
To be honest, I think they are a little bit optimistic. On the other side, I think we should be prepared, as Fredrik also mentioned earlier, that if we can use more energy, actually the Nordics will be in a better position. So energy is a solution to growth. So to prepare, and I think especially the grid operators and also producers, they have to be the front runner in this. The problem is, of course, to make all decisions economical right, but to build an infrastructure which can handle growth. I'm supportive into that. But if it comes, if you take 10 years ahead, it could be the data centers and quick movers. But to build industry and these kind of things, that will take time, I think, to be honest.
A final question for you, gentlemen. I mean, I'd like to go into lots of other detail, but unfortunately time does not allow. What does the power market look like in 2035, Fredrik, in the Nordic region?
Oh, yeah, 10 years, that moves pretty fast. I've realized now after 30 years in the business. But I'm optimistic as I started. Even if there are challenges, we will slow them. We will solve them, but slower than we thought. I think that we are, let's say, on the step of a revolution here with the AI. That's okay. It's easy to say it, but it's the more I look into it, I think, okay, this is the big thing. And in my world, the cost of providing AI that will converge to the cost of energy. So where will we find the cheapest energy? And there, Sweden, Norway, Finland has an excellent position. So hopefully in 2035, our three TSOs have learned to cooperate. And they have, let's say, solved the problem up in the north and north to south. And that's what I want to see in 2035. I think that's the absolute key to get the TSOs into the same room and solve that problem. Start cooperating and start building, not waiting for demand, but they need to have some strong guidance. I think that build and it will come.
Absolutely. What's your view, Kolbjørn?
No, it's quite the same. I think cooperation between the Nordic countries is crucial. We have different geographical countries. Norway can use the height and the reservoirs much better, I think. If Sweden can contribute with more stable nuclear, I think that's great for the market. But we have to cooperate. We have to make a plan Nordic. And I also think in 2035 we are much more linked to Europe. It's a big discussion in Norway going on cut the cables. Nothing in Europe is telling that we should be more on our own. We are actually more together. So also a link to Europe that we have to solve in Europe, the energy crisis and energy challenge, and we have to be a part of that solution as Nordic countries also. So that's my view on 2035.
Yep. So not so much as cut the cables, but build more cables even,
I think
and
so.
increase interconnectivity is a solution here, I think. And not so be so sort of navel gazing or isolationistic. Fredrik.
Yeah, and I think that's quite ironic that also in Sweden they put this German cable on hold, and so they have the same discussion there, and at the same time 90% of the discussion is around how stupid Trump is, and then we're doing the exact same thing. We're isolation.
But I think it's nice that you guys are, ending on a spirit of cooperation, pan-Nordic cooperation and optimism. Fredrik and Kolbjørn, thank you very much indeed for being guests on the Montel podcast today.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
It's been an excellent and insightful discussion. I hope you agree, listeners. And thank you for tuning in to this episode. Our podcast episodes are released every Friday. For the latest news from Montel, please visit montelnews.com, and you can follow us on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, and other social media channels. See you next time.